welcome back to Plan B. I'm Sherry.
And I'm Connie.
Today we're going to talk with you about something just a little bit different. Last time we were with you, we talked about the difference between supporting and enabling.
And today we're going to really get into what addiction actually looks like, how active addiction affected my life as well as Mom's. So we hope you enjoy.
Okay, so as we talk about what active addiction looks like, there's a couple of reasons why we want to share this. I know some people wonder why we would talk about this part of it, but the reason we tell this is to educate. I didn't know what I was seeing, and so in sharing this, it can help educate. And because it is a part of the story and it needs to be told, I don't want to, brush by this as if it's too ugly to share. And in doing that, then I add to the stigma.
And the shame.
Yes, exactly. Also, there's a lot of glamour associated with drug use. So in telling this and letting you peek into the real life of addiction, hopefully it can unglamorize that for some people.
And I want to share this because that was how I got hope. Hearing other people share their story, their experience, strength, and hope, talking about, I've been there, I've been in the dirtiest, ugliest parts of it, and I came out of it. And in hearing people share that, that was how I got hope, and that was how I began to recover. So I think it's really important for me to share that as well. I've learned that in sharing my story, I can help others as others have helped me by sharing their story.
Which goes back to the whole reason we're doing this Plan B,
Exactly.
is to give other people hope.
So talking about where active addiction took me, where it takes us, how did you see that? Where did you see my addiction taking me? How did you see that playing out or manifesting in ways that you could see?
Distancing yourself more and more from family would probably be the biggest and the first thing. And then you were just gone a lot. Then couldn't hold a job or wouldn't or something, And there was always a legit reason why you moved from job to job. Oh, I know. Speeding. You drove like a bat out of...
I did. It's terrible.
I remember seeing you come down our driveway and I would think, oh no, something's bad's happened. It's an emergency. Nope, you were just coming home. So speeding.
It was terrible.
Yeah. Wow. The music you listened to got worse and worse. Like music I didn't even know that was even out there. So that was one of them. And then risky behavior.
What do you know about that?
I saw a little bit of that.
Right.
I mean, there was a huge degree of it I wasn't even aware of, but there was some.
Yeah.
The boyfriends, knowing that you were doing some parties, kind of knowing it, like having a gut feeling and knowing something wasn't quite right, but not knowing for sure what you were doing. Oh, and then another thing, like hygiene was either spot on, awesome, beautiful makeup, hair done, or it was like you didn't, like, do you
Days,
even care?
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would see that too. And then the rush in and grab clothes and change and grab a shower and maybe eat, maybe not eat, and then rush back out. So that's the kind of thing I would see, but I also just didn't know what was going on when you were away. So I'm going to ask you a question that maybe you can just open up and let everybody see something that most people will never see, some have, and that I know I have a degree of understanding, but even I could learn more, is what is it like to live in active addiction? What does that look like? What do your days look like?
I think the true definition of what my life was in active addiction was my entire life eventually became about getting and using the drugs, alcohol, whatever, and finding ways and means to get more.
You mean that would be the focus of your daily living?
The definition of that was my entire life. That was my focus. Every day, that was what it was about. And whatever had to be done to get to that point. And when my entire focus was getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, that means everything else goes out the window. Family, friends. I lost all of my friends. I had a couple close friends early on, and I very quickly lost some really good friends. They had to distance themselves from me. And I lost my family. I barely had my family in my life by the time I got arrested. I lost everybody. And then the people I'm out there with, they were my friends. They were just a ways to an end. or people I just got high with or partied with or whatever. My entire life was about using and finding ways and means to get more to use. Everything else is sacrificed. Everything else is secondary.
Even your health.
It wasn't even like in awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I would go days without eating. And usually wasn't even hungry. And then sometimes I'd be hungry, but just no appetite. Usually when I ate during that time, it was because I had to force myself to, because I knew I had to eat to like keep functioning. But for the most part, I was barely eating. And we're overlaying some pictures on this video that I've saved from that time period in my life.
Those are rough. Every time I see these pictures.
Yeah. 6-7 days in a row of no sleep. And then crash sleep for a couple hours in the afternoon, and then I'm back up again for 3 more days.
And that's from the crew you can trust. Warranty plus for fucking shit up. Don't got you, I got nothing. Who love you when no one there? Who love you when no one cares? I know it hurts sometimes, but you'll get over it. Yo, bitch get toe up. She want another cup. You bitch, I am not one of these niggas banging on wax. Pussy niggas. Drink, Molly's, perks, lean.
That was shortly before I got arrested. It was very common for me to go days and days without sleeping, days without eating. A big part of what tremendously affected me is I had been dealing with this for years, but as my addiction progressed, I had less and less respect for myself. And if you can't respect yourself, how can you expect other people to respect you?
Yeah. So then if you say it's always about finding ways and means to get and use more, what do you do to get more?
Everything. There was always some hustle. You know, there was always something going on the side to make some money. Whether that was there for a little bit, I was tattooing people with a buddy's tattoo gun, and that was robbing people. I robbed a lot of people. It was a lot. There were guns coming in and out of my possession, selling those. Looking back, I can't really like pinpoint, oh, this is how I always had money to, but there was always something. But the primary way I fueled my habit was I sold the drugs. I was always selling the drugs. The whole time I was never just using and not selling except for one short time period before I got arrested, when I was really bottomed out. But I was always selling the drugs, which meant I was using out of my product, which meant if I was lucky, I would make my money back. If I wasn't, I was in the hole every time, and I had to find some other way to fill this. You know, towards the end, when things got really bad for me, it was robbing people at gunpoint. It was having sex for drugs. Any and everything. Because the reason my addiction progressed so badly, so exceedingly fast, was I used drugs because I couldn't face or feel certain things. But the further I got into the lifestyle and into my addiction, the more things got created that I couldn't handle, that I couldn't feel, which progressed the using even further, because then that's one more thing I can't deal with.
Are you saying as the further you got in, the more things you did or were involved in,
Or saw
or were part of or happened to you, that you couldn't even deal with that, so
right.
you use
more.
It's
like I started using in the first place because I couldn't deal with these things. But the further I got into that lifestyle, the more things happened that I couldn't deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Saw people die. I had friends die in front of me. People I considered friends. Friends die in front of me, OD, and we get them to come back. Pump their chest. I gave friends CPR many times. Those things don't just happen and pass by. You know, you have to live with this stuff. Other people I've seen die in front of me, or the people I've known who have died. And just so the further into addiction I got, the more painful things were created to keep trying to use to escape from.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing people die, being shot at. Every day, going throughout my day, not knowing where I was going to sleep that night. I'm going to figure that out as I go. 2 months of that. Of every day, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight, and we'll figure it out as I go. If I'm going to sleep tonight. Got easier once I didn't sleep.
And for me, I remember during that time period, I'm sitting at home, and I'm wondering where you are, if you're okay, and where are you going to sleep? And are you hungry? And are you cold? And where are you? Are you safe? And just weeks and months of having no clue, not knowing at all. And, at the same time, you're wondering yourself, where am I going to sleep tonight?
I remember one of the more painful, memories for me was when I got a text from her saying, "It's been a long time since I've heard from you. Can you just text me back so I know you're alive?"
Oh, yeah.
That shit.
Was that hard for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that was really hard for me. No wonder you were relieved when I went to jail.
Right. Right, exactly. And I didn't even know all this time the level at which you were in it. I didn't know what you were doing.
I didn't either.
I didn't know you were selling drugs and guns and selling yourself. And when I think about that, just the
And I justified everything. I said, well, I never prostituted because I never had sex for money exchange. But
wow, it's amazing the lies we can tell ourselves.
The justification. But, somebody providing drugs and a place to sleep, that's where I was at that night. And the levels to which I degraded myself are just, that shit's hard to come back from. And it established a pretty permanent reputation for me in this town.
Yeah.
And that I still, and it's been 2 years, and I'm still hear about that reputation.
But the beauty of that is you now have an opportunity to change that. Not erase it, because it's still going to be there, but to change it.
Yeah. But yeah, where did drug addiction take me? Drug addiction took me to the hospital with skull fractures from my boyfriend I was using with. Drug addiction took me to jail. Drug addiction had me involved in stuff that I still can't talk about.
Drug addiction had way too many police cars pulling up to my house. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, it had me, anytime I would be in town, I remember looking everywhere and everything. Was that her truck? Is that her truck? Wondering, is that you? Are you okay? I even drove around in some weird back alley parking lots thinking, well, maybe she's back here. And, I had no clue, but always wondering.
Yeah. Another thing drug addiction did, totaled my truck. Not totaled from an accident, just ran into the ground. I think it was just a straight year of just absolute neglect. The
kinda
literal
like your own
whole,
body.
Yeah, at least I lived through it. My truck didn't. Literally the whole brake unit on my back left tire, or right, one of my back tires fell out onto the road in an intersection, and I had to ride up a hill and then run into a brick wall to stop because my brakes were gone. And for a month or two before that, the other one, the brake line was disconnected because that brake was gone already. So my dad had just crimped off the brake line because it was dripping brake fluid everywhere. And then the other one fell out, so I was just done. But I knew once the other back one went out, there was no braking. And I drove it for 30 more minutes that night.
I remember during that time, not knowing where you were, hardly ever seeing you, but you would come home every once in a while. And I remember you telling us something about your truck, not breaking down or something with the brakes. And at that time we already knew we weren't going to pay for getting your truck fixed because that's your responsibility. And we felt like that would be enabling. But I remember your dad going out there and doing what he could do to rig that brake
Crimp
line.
the brake line.
And he came inside, and I asked him, "Why are you doing that? She's got to want to fix this and then do it herself." And I remember him crying and saying, "Because that's all I can do." And that was hard for him. And if all you can do is go crimp a brake line, then, that's what you do.
Well, that crimped brake line, I think, got me through at least another 2 weeks or so. Unfortunately, when the brakes completely went out, it was like 2 a.m. on like a smaller street. So there wasn't, and I was at like 25 miles an hour, so it wasn't too bad.
Did you steal from us?
Mm-mm. Oh, I stole quarters out of your coin jar.
Seriously?
I needed a black and mild a couple times. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure, as far as I know, that is all I ever stole from you. I definitely stole out of your coin jar.
I never
But I remember
thought you did.
There were weeks where I didn't have 50 cents to get a black and mild this month.
I remember being gone a couple times and just like not knowing what was going on, what you're into, coming home and like, yep, TV's still there, laptop is still there,
Yeah.
But
And the thing is, people wonder how we're able to have this relationship and why they can't have theirs with their. And Mom and I were actually talking about this the other day, and I said, well, I was out there a short period of time, and that's where I'm the most lucky. That's when the most...
In comparison, yeah.
I said, imagine if I had been out there 10 more years like that. Damn sure would have stolen your TV a few times.
Oh, dear.
So...
Well, it's true. Addicts, as a reputation, they burn bridges.
Because, and that goes back to what I was saying before, your entire life and focus is finding ways and means to get more. So everything else that falls below that line is gone and doesn't matter. And I felt bad inside every time I did these things, but
the other drove you more.
But it drove me more. It was more important because I felt that I couldn't survive without it.
And that, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned is you can do horrible things, hate yourself while you're doing them, wish you didn't, and still do them. Because it's something else that drives, something deeper that drives you.
You think I felt good selling heroin to a pregnant girl?
Oh my gosh.
That shit eats me up. And drugs didn't make it feel better either, but it helped.
It temporarily.
Temporarily.
Numbed it temporarily.
But it had to not matter. It couldn't matter. I couldn't think about it. Because if you start thinking about those things, if you start thinking about, well, I'm selling drugs, I'm contributing to a drug problem in our area, in our state. If you let that shit get to you, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has to not matter. You have to be able to just do it anyways. You have to harden yourself to those things. And it becomes all about, I gotta do what I gotta do to get me straight. Nothing else matters. Because otherwise, we wouldn't be shooting at each other. We wouldn't be pointing guns in people's faces or even selling drugs to each other.
So finding ways and means to get more means...
By whatever means necessary.
By whatever means, literally.
The means are whatever means necessary.
And did you think, did you always have this in your mind, like, okay, well, I'm never going to do that. Like, I will never go there because that's a real addict.
Always. From day one, yeah. It's a denial thing, and we always, I say we because as addicts, it's pretty much across the board, but I'm really speaking about myself. I always had a justification like, well, you can't call me a fiend because I'm not that. you know, I don't do that, I don't look like that, well, at least I'm not out here selling my body for money. At least I'm not out here. Whatever the line you draw, whatever line I drew, and it started a lot smaller than that.
Right.
Well, at least I've never robbed anybody. I'm not that, so I'm not an addict. And then you cross that line. And then you draw the next one. Well, at least I don't look skinny and deathly and my face isn't fucked up. And then you cross that line. And then it's, well, at least I'm not this. You will always draw a line and always cross it, because that's the way addiction progresses. Every addict draws a line in their head of, well, I'm not this, so I'm not that bad. And then they cross that and have to draw a different one. So everyone wants to disqualify themselves from being a drug addict or a fiend or a walk or a dope head or whatever it is. We all draw lines to say, well, I'm not a cokehead because.
Right.
Or I'm not an addict.
But then you actually blow through all of those lines.
Yeah. And if you look back, you already had blown through a lot of lines. You just drew new ones.
Well, I hope this has given you a peek into what it's like to live as an addict. It's definitely given it to me, brought back reminders. I've learned some new things. And there's no way you look at that it's pretty or glamorous. In fact, it's pretty heartbreaking and gut-wrenching.
It's ugly.
It's nothing but ugly. And yet,
we do recover.
There's hope. There's hope.
So thanks for joining us. If you like this video, like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and like the video and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think.
And pass it on to anybody you know that could benefit. Also, stay tuned for our next video. Next, we're going to be talking about something a little more upbeat, and that's about staying clean, what it's like to be clean.
So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hug your mom.